Okay, so I made a presentation for you guys. So this is my story of how from Dhaka, Bangladesh, I got into Stanford with a full tuition scholarship. So let us begin. Yeah. So about me, well, I'm a 19-year-old who graduated from Mastermind English Medium School, and I applied to Stanford in my gap year. So this was also the second time I applied. I first applied in my senior year of high school, and then I applied as a gap year applicant. And some interesting things about me is the fact that I love turtles and cycling, and that's gonna come in handy because this is something I literally wrote about in my essays and personal statement as well. And I'm entering Stanford as a CS and Earth Systems major. In case you don't know what Earth Systems is, it's basically something like environmental science, and this is important to me because I want to launch startups related to climate science in the years to come. So let us begin. So before we start, let me talk about my academic stats. I went to an English medium school in Bangladesh, and in case guys don't know what English medium is about, it's basically a curriculum from the United Kingdom. And I got 9 A stars and 4 A stars, 9 A stars in O levels and 4 A stars in A levels, and that roughly corresponds to like a four GPA, unweighted. And I had an A level average of like 95%, which was probably like the highest possible grades achievable. And I also gave this SAT 2 times. So the first time I gave it, it was a paper SAT, and I got a 1500 on the paper SAT. And then I gave the DSAT in May of 2023, where I got a 1570, and my breakdown was like 780 in the EBRW section and 790 in the math. And then let's talk about my some of my achievements. So I was always someone who wanted to apply abroad from a very young age. For example, from like class 8 or 9, and thus I was very active when it came to achieve Olympiads and extracurricular activities. So as you could see, I started from way back during the COVID times. I started with the Bangladesh Economics Olympiad. It's basically a competition where you use your economics knowledge to solve problems and then do some case studies as well. And I was sixth on that team. And then I got to represent my nation on the global stage in the World Economics Olympiad. Oh, and where I got a silver medal. This is a typo. I basically got a silver medal in that Olympiad. And then as for the other things, I got a gold honor, which is given to the top 10 teams globally in the Climate Science Olympiad. We were also supposed to actually present our solutions to the in Dubai during the International Climate Conference in 2023, but due to visa problems, we couldn't go, me and my teammate. And I also am someone who loves writing a lot. So I also participated in the Queen's Commonwealth Essay Competition. It's basically a competition that you guys can also participate in because if I recall correctly, the competition is still ongoing and it's gonna end by August, I guess, or July. So you could participate in that. I participated in that and I was like 132nd out of 26,000 teams last year, 26,000 people last year. And then I was also someone who has taken an interest in startups from a very young age. So I always used to participate in uh, business competitions. So this was also another competition I was placed really well in. This is something called Young Tycoons Business Challenge. This is a competition in which you can present your startup ideas to judges. And if you are in like the top 10, you get funded and you get mentored by a startup accelerator, and you also get to launch your dream startup. So in that competition, I was like in the top 100. So as for my, oh no, yeah, give me 1 minute. Yeah. As for my extracurricular activities, most of these activities are things I have really have an interest in. For example, I am majoring in Earth systems, right? So the environment and conservation, this means a lot to me, especially since I have turtles I have kept for the last 14 years. So reptiles are something which are really important to me. And as such, this research activity is something I did partook in my gap year. Basically, I was an intern at the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change under a professor, and I got to handle endangered reptiles, specifically endangered species like the Indian black soft-shell turtle. These are really rare reptiles. There are only like 500 individuals left in the wild. And I also supported in data collection and contributed to that particular professor's academic publications. And as for another thing, I also did an educational startup. Basically, in my country, there's not really a lot of A-level resources. So what I did as founder of ACE Academy is that I provided a lot of A-level courses in physics and mathematics and provided learning materials and disseminated materials via YouTube and Facebook to hundreds of learners. And then another thing I did is that I was a CS Explore mentor. So in case you don't know what CS Explore is, it's basically a program under the climate science organization, and it's an organization supported by the UN. It basically helps raise awareness about the climate change to youths, and in that organization, I conducted workshops to raise awareness about conservation in third world countries like ours. And another thing that I did in my gap year is that I am someone who loves tinkering with drones. So what I did with my drone is that I conducted Bangladesh has these unique landscapes called wetlands, which get flooded with water throughout the rainy season. So what I did is that I conducted detailed mapping of these wetlands around my city during the monsoon. And I relayed the data to researchers who were working on this particular wetland conservation and research efforts. And I was also active in my school year as well. For example, I was the head of Business and Economics Forum and Business Society, Science Society, and through these clubs, I hosted and organized events for juniors and stuff. And another thing that's very important to my identity is cycling. This is something I do every single week for the last 4 years. I go outside of my city and cycle like 20 to 100 kilometers all around the wetlands surrounding my city. And I carry out I do cinematic drone videos and nature photography of these valuable wetland places. So this is just a summary of my extracurricular activities. And now you might be thinking that I applied and then I got to a lot of places, right? But this wasn't really the case. I actually applied over 2 years. And the first time I applied, I kind of got rejected or waitlisted every single place, like every single of the 19 universities I applied to. I only got, I think, waitlisted to a couple like Colby and Vassar and stuff like that, and Harvard, Columbia, Millbury, Haverford, just some of the places I can recall of the top of my head that universities that I got rejected from. So this is actually understandable because if you are an international who requires a lot of aid, for example, from a full tuition to a full ride, you are going to get rejected by a lot of universities. But after I got rejected or waitlisted from so many universities, I reflected upon my strategy and I kind of found a couple of problems with why, and I found out the reasons, I think, which contributed to so many rejections. So some of the key takeaways were that since I was a senior, I already had a lot of academic stuff I had to prepare for SAT. I had to also do my ECAs and my club activities as well. So I got my hands full. So as such, I did not really research too much into colleges. So as a result, I rushed in my college search, a selection. Honestly speaking, you should apply to a lot of universities, and you should apply to a lot of lot of safeties, then target schools, and finally just a few reach schools. And the problem, what I did is that I applied to a lot of reach schools and no safety schools at all. And the problem is the fact that these universities are very selective, and they have something like a quota system. They only will take one or two people maximum from every single country or every single region every year. So if you apply to just at very top universities, research university, and to the top LSEs, there's a high probability that you're going to get rejected, even if you have an Ivy grade profile or a really good profile or something. And another problem, what I did is that I was US centric. The US process, yes, it is very holistic, but it's also very unfair because so many people apply to so many colleges that the colleges just don't have enough space for you. For example, Stanford tells on their website that they have enough qualified applicants to fill their classes 3 times over. So it's just luck that you got rejected from a particular university or something. And that's why you should not just apply to the US. You also should spread your basket and not just put all of your eggs in one basket. You should also apply to other countries which offer significant aid. For example, the European countries like Finland or Sweden or Belgium, or at least even have a backup in your own country so that you don't have nowhere to go in case you get rejected everywhere. And another problem was the fact that I think I did a lot of things, and that contributed to a scattered application theme. So what you have to do in your US applications is that you have to have a very specific application theme. You have to sell yourself to a university to make them understand why you're a perfect fit for that particular university. So, for example, if you are passionate about Earth's environmental science and you want to study environmental science, maybe do startups or maybe research in conservation, you're gonna have to do activities related to it, and you have to let that passion shine in your particular essays that you write. In other words, you're gonna have to have a spike. For example, for me, my spike was conservation, and for my love for turtles. I'm gonna talk about that when I talk about my essay section. So you're gonna have to have a spike in order to have any shot at success in the US application season, because there are so many people who apply. There's thousands of seats. Probably Stanford in I think 1,200 or 2,000 people applied to Stanford from my particular country, and I was the only one who got in. So it's insanely competitive. And also, another thing why I think I got rejected was the fact that I think I rushed my essays way too much. I remember writing my essays just 1 hour before the deadline. And honestly speaking, that doesn't really work because you are competing against people who probably finished their essays months before, who probably took the help of mentors and admission counseling programs and stuff. So you cannot rush your essays. I think in your entire application, the thing that matters the most is your academic GPA and SAT scores, and after that, your essays. So essays are of paramount importance, and you should not just rush your essays. So these are the things I reflected on up in my gap year. And then what did I do in my gap year? So I just kept on. So I just took a break for 1 or 2 months just to let that sink in, to except that I did not get anywhere while my friends also got into great schools. So then after I took that break, I doubled down on my EC efforts. For example, the research internship that I was talking about earlier, about that turtle conservation and handling very endangered and rare specimens. This is something I did in my gap year. And another thing I did in my gap year is that I worked on ACE Academy a lot, and I disseminated a lot more resources related to high school education in my country. And then another thing that I did is that I took the SAT again in May of last year, and then I boosted my SAT score by 70 points. Even this 70 points from 50, you might be thinking then from 1500 onwards is the same. Yeah, it is. But it's if you are an international seeking significant aid, if you are seeking full ride, then this 70 point really helps, because this 70 points from 1500 to 1570, this put me from 25 percentile at Stanford to being better than 75% of applicants at Stanford. And that is an advantage, that your SAT scores are better than 75% of applicants. In fact, if you have a 1570 score, I think you're going to be better than 70. You're going to be at the 75th percentile for every single school except for maybe MIT and Caltech. So the better the SAT score, the better chances you have at success, because more and more top schools are becoming SAT required for fall 25 and fall 26. So it's very necessary that you give and submit your SAT scores, because if you don't, you will be at an advantage even if the universities say otherwise. Okay, and then another thing what I did is that I researched a lot in depth on my universities, and then I only chose the universities which suited my profile. For example, I was someone who slept and breathed admissions for like 2 years. I was someone who checked Reddit, who checked Discord, and checked the admission groups in my own country for 2 or 3 years. So I kind of had an idea as to what particular universities wanted from particular regions. For example, I believe that I got into both Rice and Stanford because they kind of want the same type of applicants from my country. For example, they want leaders who are activists who care passionately about a particular world problem, which in my case was conservation or the environment. So they want change makers who can bring this thing to their university. For on the other hand, if I were to apply to MIT, I'm pretty sure I would get rejected. And so I never applied to MIT. And the reason is that MIT only wants people who are almost like pure nerds. Like if you are people who are builders, who are engineers, who can, or people who want to work in quantitative finance, then MIT is the way to go. If you have ECAs pertaining to this particular fields, then MIT might take you. If you have a hard science Olympiad field, for example, if you got a medal in the IMO, International Mathematics Olympiad, or the International Informatics Olympiad, then you have a shot at universities like Caltech or MIT or U Chicago, because these universities want that. So you're gonna have to research in depth about which universities you are suited to, because you have to the universities also have to want you just as much as you want the university. That's the only way you can get into that said university in the first place. And what I also did is that I worked on my college essays a lot this time. So what I mean by this is that when I applied in my senior year of high school, I only started writing applications just like 2 or 3 weeks before my early decision deadline, and that's really bad. So instead, what I did this year is that last year is that I started on my essays from July or August, which means there were 4 or 5 months before the early decision deadlines. And this time, I reapplied to universities again, but this time I applied everywhere. For example, I applied to I think 5 countries this year: Singapore, Hong Kong, then Finland, and Canada, UK, and the US. So in total, I think this year I applied to about 25 or 27 universities. because I did not want to apply just to US again and then get rejected again. And even then, I applied in my home country again so that I still have some place to go, even if this doesn't work out. And another thing that I just did is that I got to enjoy my gap year. So I was someone who was always kind of a nerd and I always worked really hard. So gap year was a time to just pursue my hobbies. For example, take care of my turtles, then work at that turtle conservatory, then go cycling to the wetlands around Dhaka, then to pursue nature photography of birds. These are just some things I like. So I would say I kind of enjoyed my gap year by pursuing these hobbies. I'm probably gonna do these for life, even at Stanford and beyond. So, as for the results, this year I still got rejected from a lot of places. For example, even after doing so many things, I applied early decision to Cornell, and then I got rejected from Cornell. And then I applied early decision to Tufts, and then I got rejected from Tufts too in my early decision too. But then I still got success. For example, I got into LSE, UCL, and I got waitlisted as a Pearson Scholar at the U of T. I got accepted at U of T as well. Then U Florida, Oberlin, and then I was also one of the only two uh, people from my country to get into Rice, and one of the only three people to get into Colby from my country. And also obviously Stanford as well, because I will be picking Stanford. And I got a full tuition plus a health insurance scholarship at Stanford. I only have to pay my living costs. So what changed? What is the differentiating factor between why I got rejected in my senior year of high school and why I got accepted into a lot of into a lot of universities this year? I think this time it was due to the fact that my application theme was better. Last time it was scattered. For example, I still had a lot of conservation related ECAs and ACE Academy as well, but I wrote in my Common App that I wanted to become a neurologist, and that just doesn't add up to admission officers. They want to see a story, something that sticks in their mind when they talk about you to the admissions committee. And if you don't stick around in their mind, then you're just going to be in the admissions pile. So you're going to have to portray a story. You have to portray a theme of what you want to do through that education at that particular universities. That's why you have to concentrate your ECAs, and then you have to concentrate your ECAs and then apply to a particular major around that particular ECA. I don't think that isn't an issue when it comes to applying to liberal arts colleges, because they want well-rounded profiles. But national research universities like Stanford or Washington University in St. Louis or UCLA or UC Berkeley, these want a particular themed profile. They want a spike so that you are noticeable from the thousands of applicants who do apply. Another thing is what I told already, college selection, that's of paramount importance. And of course, essays. I think I'm a good writer, but this time my essays were more focused into what I wanted to portray of myself. I think these essays really showed my genuine and my authentic side. For example, I did not write about a single achievement at all. I wrote about my passions, I wrote about my turtles in my personal statement. I wrote about how I loved caring for my turtles, and then how they sparked sense of conservation in me, and then what I did throughout my life to save turtles from extinction. And I also paired together my love for cycling, and then how I told about how I loved wetlands, and how I want to save these wetlands in the years to come. So I think this is something that resonated with the admissions officers. My story, my genuine, my authenticity. You have to paint a story. You just don't. You can't just do like, yes, I applied. Now I'm gonna have to get it. No, you have to paint a story about What makes you you and you unique from these thousands of applicants who do apply? And then what I also did is that I did not write about the conservation thing just in my personal statement. I also introduced this theme to my supplemental essays as well. So, for example, in case you guys didn't know, you have to write 8 essays to Stanford, 5 small essays and 3 large ones. So, I think the conservation and environmentalism theme was prevalent in, I think, 5 of those 8 essays. So those 5 essays just merely extended just what I wrote in my personal statement essay. So you have to paint a plot about your entire story. And last but not least, even if you get rejected again if in your gap year, it isn't the end of the world. Like there's so many universities, there's thousands of universities. You can do well even if you apply to a mid-tier university or a safety university, someplace you never even considered going. It's just college is just a time to experience and enjoy life. What matters is the experiences and the skills that you get out of it. Because 5 or 10 years down the line, nobody's going to care if you go from if you graduate from Stanford or some state university or some community college. What they will care about is what skills you can bring on board to that particular company. Yes, a good university is gonna give you a boost, but it's just gonna be short term. In the long term, it's just gonna be you and your skills, honestly speaking. So yeah, that's my presentation, guys.
Well, wonderful, Zareef. You're a true natural storyteller, I must say. I loved the entire webinar. I was like completely focused into this. And I completely love successful gap year stories. I think that's really inspirational for everyone taking gap years out there. And I especially love the part where you emphasize individuality, painting a story and not just applying. I think that is more important than most people realize. So thank you. That was amazing. And I would love to take like a moment to sort of take a stroll into the chat box and see what our participants have to ask you today. So give me a second.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so a really requested one is SAT tips. So since you have a really, really competitive score, we'd love to know what resources you used and what tips you might have for everyone who's struggling with the SATs, anything.
Okay. Since I have given both the paper style and the DSAT, I believe I have a better experience when it comes to giving the SAT. I would honestly say that as for math, you should just do the math textbooks that are already on the internet. For example, the Orange Book or Erica Meltzer's or the College Panda book. And you should also work through Khan Academy because that's a really good resource when it comes to math. But as for evidence-based reading and writing, I would honestly say that it depends on your English proficiency. Honestly speaking, the more you read, the better you're going to be at English reading actually. No amount of Erica Melzer's practice books or Khan Academy is gonna make you suddenly jump from 580 in EBRW to 780 in EBRW. No, it doesn't work like that. It's like a gradual process. So what I would suggest is that you guys should go through hard literature. And by literature, I mean that books from the early 19th or 20th century, if you can, and magazines like Economist magazine or Time magazine. These are things from which articles about SAT regularly pop up in the SAT exams. And and some more things I would suggest is books like Godfather or the Game of Thrones. If you have patience reading a 5,000 page book series, yeah, I did that. But honestly speaking, you have to read a lot. I think at least 100 hours of reading can automatically bring about an improvement in your EBRW scores.
Right, right. I see. Perfect. So, another question I see here, it is related to safeties for international students and sort of how to receive full funding from universities and how to find universities that receive full funding. So, what do you have to say for like, of getting full rides and trying to get into like full ride colleges and universities?
Okay. If you the full ride thing, it's a bit of a sensitive issue because thing is, not a lot of universities provide full rides in the first place. Like full rides are full rides, if you mean by what you mean by full rides is university paying your living costs, your tuition, your plane expenses, and even your health insurance and service fee, then I would say that that situation is like really rare. Uh, Even in Stanford, I think there's only one guy I know out of the 1,700 people who got a full ride. And that guy, I think he got a full ride because he came from Afghanistan. And that's a country ravaged by Taliban. They don't even have the internet there. So that's why he might have gotten a full ride. But the full rides are really, really hard to find. So honestly speaking, the US admissions is also based on something called EFC, which stands for expected financial contribution. So the more you can pay, the better your chances are at success in the US universities. And some universities, for example, liberal arts colleges, they have a particular EFC threshold below which they're just not going to accept you. For example, for colleges like Rhodes or Oberlin or Gettysburg, it's like 20,000 to 25,000 USD. So it depends on the EFCs. And if you are an international seeking a total full ride, like the definition what I told you just now, I'm sorry to say that you don't have any safeties. Everything is like a reach for you. But if you improve your EFC, then you have a more breathing room, so to speak. For example, if you have an EFC of $10,000, then you can apply to University of Dallas, Texas, or Arlington, and there you might be able to get full tuition or half living expenses, which might help you bear the rest of the expenses by yourself.
Great, perfect. I hope that clears out that very popular query, right? So there's another popular query that most people have. I'll sort of sum it up for you. So like many people connect, like for example, bad academic results or sort of average academic results with like, do I have to compensate that with SAT scores or IELTS scores? So what do you have to say about that?
Okay, if you apply to the very top universities, for example, Ivy and Ivy Plus universities, I would say that every single thing matters if you are an international seeking aid. So if for some reason your GPA falls down, then you can explain some of it through some essays or there's something called the additional details section in your Common App. So you can explain why that happened. Maybe someone passed away, or maybe you were going through an emotionally tough stage in your life. Admissions officers will easily understand that, and that's why you have the 650 word additional details section for. And as for that, I would say that if you have a low GPA, yes, you're gonna have to improve your SAT scores to be better than the pile. Like Stanford gets like 50,000 people, 50 to 60,000 applicants every single year. So if you are bad in if you are subpar in one particular segment, you're gonna have to make up for it in your SATs or your essays or your other things as well. Remember that the US process is a holistic process. And although it's a holistic process, GPA actually matters the most.
Right, right. Amazing. So I also had like a specific question. So like many people talk about like showing demonstrated interest and how much that plays a role as well in giving interviews. So like did you give any interview and did you
Um,
face that from your end?
Yeah, I did give a bunch of interviews. For example, I gave an interview at Rice, and the other colleges did give an interview at, I got rejected from them. And as for demonstrated interest, I think it yields different results. For example, demonstrated interest, in my opinion, only works if you are applying early decision. If you're applying early decision, there's already a lot fewer applicants, so the admission officers have a lot of breathing room. So if you send a lot of emails back and forth to admissions officers with actual queries, not just conversation, that annoys them. With actual veritable queries, and then interviews or talking with professor, yes, that's definitely gonna help. Because I know of a girl from my country, she did do a lot of demonstrated interest. I mean, I think she did exchange like 20 or 30 emails between her AO, so much to the point that her AO started talking about the AO's cat to her. I think that definitely helps because you get noticed and then they want you. And then she actually got a full ride. She got a $90,000 per year scholarship at Washington and Lee. But it actually varies from university to university. I know of another person who did a lot of demonstrated interest and stuff, but then she got rejected everywhere. So it kind of varies. But if you have time, you should, honestly.
Right. That also brings me up to one of the conversations I had with you before this webinar. Like you did mention, like, about your Common App essay and how simple it was in a unique way about your turtles. You did say your admissions officer from Stanford separately emailed you about your passionate hobbies, right? So can you tell me a little bit about that?
That particular email.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think from that email, I understood that my spike was my love for turtles and conservation. And the admissions officer really loved my personal statement, which because she actually picked up a line from that particular essay and then told me that this really resonated with her, and then she wished me best of luck in my aims to launch a startup in conservation.
Oh, right. Interesting. Great. So I do also remember like there's a query here about UK and Canadian universities offering in like financial aid or full rights to international undergraduate students. So since you have your experience, you did apply, if I'm not wrong, or I did research at least. So can you tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Canada actually has some scholarships which are kind of for some reason not really publicized about. For example, the two most famous scholarships is the Lester B. Pearson Scholarship from the University of Toronto. It basically is a full ride scholarship for 30 supports 37 scholars every year. So it's actually very competitive as well because it has a acceptance rate of just less than 1%. And you also have to make sure that your school is a recognized school. And by that I mean that your school is registered with the U of T. Because in Lester B. Pearson, your school has to nominate you as an exceptional candidate, and your school can nominate only one person per year for this Pearson scholarship. And another nomination-based scholarship is the UBC ILOT scholarship, International Leaders of Tomorrow scholarship. In that scholarship as well, you have to nominate scholars from a particular school, and for that you also have to get your school registered, and there can be a maximum of 3 scholars from any given school. And as for and I think there are some other full ride based scholarship or full tuition scholarships. For example, I think York has a scholarship called the Tentanda scholarship. That's something you could look into. And there's also, if any of you guys are French speaking applicants who are also bilingual in English, then you can get full tuition scholarships and from the University of Ottawa. And as for UK, UK is much more stingier. Even if you get accepted into Oxford, for example, you're still expected to pay the full cost of attendance, which equates to like 60,000 pounds every year. And they only give merit scholarships to 3 people globally, 3 out of like the 1,200 people or 2,000 people who are currently at Oxford. So that kind of is bad. I think the only place which offers full rides is UCL. UCL and Warwick. They offer like full tuition scholarships to like 30 or 40 people every year.
Okay, right. That was very insightful. Did you apply to the UK or Canada during your first or second
Yeah.
year?
No, I didn't apply to either of these countries in my first year, but yeah, in my second year I applied, and I was actually a UCL full tuition finalist as well, but I kind of didn't go through since I already got into Stanford. And I was nominated by my school for the U of T Pearson Scholarship, and I was waitlisted for the scholarship.
Wow, wonderful achievements as usual. Well, here is another question actually related back to your application journey, like when you spoke about and emphasized about an application theme, right? To like make
Yeah.
it more of a story than just an application. So
Yeah.
there are some people who wanted sort of like some pointers, some guidance to how to set it up and how to sort of find their theme.
Okay, so for firstly, uh, you have to think about what activities you have done throughout your life and what major is it relevant to? And if you're young enough, for example, if you're a 9th to 10th grader, then you have plenty of time to plan out what activities do you want to do for high school. And also, you have to show authenticity. Like you have to make sure that you are not doing these activities solely for the purpose of applying to universities. Because I know of a couple of people who did just that and they got rejected everywhere, despite having a 1590 SAT score. So you have to be authentic and you just have to pursue what you are passionate about. Because if you are passionate about something, that's going to be showing in your essays. And that's going to be something that the admission officers will pick up on easily. Because these admission officers, they read through thousands of files and they can easily understand what's genuine and what's not. So you have to first think about what you want to do in life and then um, jot together the activities which are relevant to that particular major and then apply. Also, another suggestion I would make you guys is that in the common app section, do not apply as someone who is undecided. That will be disadvantageous.
Right, amazing. As I said, individuality is key, so insightful. Thank you, Zarif. So, are there any more questions? Yes, so there is a question. What programs or Olympiads can you suggest for someone who is thinking about majoring in environmental science? Do you have anything
Oh,
to say?
okay. As for environmental science, yeah, this is something I am similar to. So what you could do is that you could go through some internships. I think I think online internships won't be good. Or even if I think, yeah, there's one online internship that's like the citizen scientist program. And other than that, I think it would be better if you were hands-on, if you took hands-on stuff and did them because you could also write about them in your essays as well. And as for the Olympiads, I think a good Olympiad would be the Climate Science Olympiad because the last admit from Stanford, he is also one of my closest friends. He also did this particular Olympiad and he got into Stanford as well. So this is something that Stanford probably regards highly, this Climate Science Olympiad. And another Olympiad that you could do is the International Biology Olympiad or the International Earth Science Olympiad.
Is it the one Veronica mentioned in the chat box? If you can take a look.
Yeah, give me 1 minute.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, this is something I was talking about, the NASA Citizen Scientist Program.
Okay, great. Thank you, Zarif. So I think I will take, I guess, 2 to 3 more minutes and see if any of you guys have any more questions for Zarif. He will be very happy to answer them. So go ahead. I'll wait a few minutes.
I do have a question as a non-student, but I'm just curious. You've mentioned that you've applied to Caltech for early decision. So I guess if I
Oh
were
no,
to
I
ask,
applied to Cornell.
oh, Cornell, yeah, sorry. So I guess if I were to ask you a few months before, you would have told me that maybe Cornell was your dream school, but now it was
Definitely.
Stanford. So kind of what was that evolution of like accepting the rejection, then being like, okay, I have many more options, and eventually why was it Stanford? Because you had some really good offers. So what was it that made Stanford your new choice?
Oh, okay, sure. As for that, I think Cornell was my dream school for the longest time because that is also some place one of my closest friends also studies at. So that would be nice. And Cornell also has an excellent computer science program. So I was absolutely crushed when I saw my rejection. That was also my 20th rejection and the first rejection in my gap year. So I was like thinking that what is happening? I'm not getting into my gap year schools as well. But I still kept applying anyways and applied to RD in Stanford and a lot of universities. Although I got into a lot of universities, Stanford was my particular choice because the place surrounding Stanford is also well known for its startup culture. For example, San Francisco and Palo Alto, there's a lot. It's like the home of all startups, and that is someplace I want to launch my startup as well. And there are a lot of startup accelerators surrounding Stanford and even in Stanford, through which you could get money for your startup. For example, the closest friend I was talking about, Ryan, his roommate, he already got a 500,000 USD grant from a startup accelerator to fund his startup. So the primary reason why I want to go to Stanford is because of the CS curricula and also because of the good startup culture. I'm gonna already have an advantage when it comes to launching my dream startup.
Well, great. That's amazing. Okay, so we have I guess one last question over here. So this is important actually. So is it safe for a gap year student to apply to the same school they got rejected from, and why?
Honestly speaking, I would say do not unless you have brought significantly new things to the application that you have otherwise not displayed in your prior application. Because if you apply to a particular university and get rejected and then reapply again, your before they even read your file, they're gonna open your previous file and then gonna compare. If they don't really see a lot of improvement, they're just going to reject it within 30 seconds. So if you have a lot of things, if you completely change your application theme or did a lot of amazing extracurricular activities, I would say do not uh, I would say to not apply to universities you already got rejected from, because there's like 1030 universities in the US, and you already, if you got rejected, you only got rejected from 20 of them, so you still have like 1000 universities to apply to, right?
Right, right. Makes sense.